Hey everybody, welcome back to the next episode of the GBL Podcast. Before we begin, I just want to remind everybody that Nothing But Net Play number 5 is going to be starting off this weekend as a 3-day event. So we're going to have Fight of Animals on Friday, same time as usual, Punch Planet on Saturday, and we're going to have a commentary by Bonesaw Baker and Swiftimus joining us for the first time. Karnav's Revenge will be returning back to the channel. We're on Sunday. All games start at 9 p.m. Eastern. All games have a Matcherino prize pot. All games are going to be hyped, so feel free to tune in. And full information is going to be at smash.gg/NBN5. So keep a look at that for your weekend plans. Alright, and now that we're getting started on the next episode of the GBL Podcast, first of all, I just want to go ahead and give introductions. Once again, you know me, I'm Shibarizu. Alien, say hello. How are you doing? That's good to hear. D, how you doing? And this week we got a special guest, Blue. Tell me how you doing.
Mr. Hype Gems, hashtag Crosswires, hashtag Street Fighter Cross Tekken, among many other games at this point. It is a pleasure to be on here. Good to have you. Good to be with you guys.
Okay. Now, I just noticed that we
Glad
might
to
have had
have you.
a little bit of tech issues with the intro, so let me just read through that. Again, Shibarizu here. Aliens, how you doing?
What up?
Diz, how you doing? One more time.
How you doing?
Great. All right. So this week, we're actually kind of just coming off of a lot of big news in fighting games, in in just gaming in general, and a lot of the spheres of our shared interest here. So I just want to. We have a very short topic list this week, but I think a lot of us speak to it very personally. So I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about. So this week we got to talk about EVO Online being canceled. We have to talk about where the FGC sits after this. A little bit about Anime and what they're planning on doing. A little bit more about next gen. We've had a very consistent conversation about next gen here on the podcast, and we now have to talk about price points. So I'm interested in seeing what we have to think about that. And the Steam sale is already underway, and I believe it goes off in tomorrow. So get your Steam games while you can, and we're going to be talking a little bit about it, recommendations, what we've been playing, stuff like that. The usual stuff that we like to talk about it. So let's just start off this week with the news, right? The news is that after allegations came out against the organizer of EVO, Joey Mr. Wizard Cuellar, some very how do I put it in any other way than frankly disturbing things to read. It's for the sake of the context and full information. I would recommend anybody watching this to go look it up. Right? Go read it. Go see everything if you like. It's all quite, I would say, surprising to read. But long story short, after these allegations came out, multiple companies started pulling out of EVO, not to mention players. So commentators, players for the exhibitions, companies themselves started pulling out. First was Capcom, then followed NetherRealm, Bandai Namco, and as soon as it started seeming like the other companies were about to pull out of their sponsorship for EVO Online 2020, they just announced to cancel the whole thing. So if anyone doesn't know, what does that mean? What does EVO Online canceled really mean? What it really means is that Mr. Wizard has been removed from his position as CEO, or will be, because we don't know the processes, and Tony Cannon will be replacing Mr. Wizard as CEO, right? So if anyone's not familiar with the main organizers of EVO up until this point, it's been mostly Mr. Wizard as the face, and the Cannon brothers, Tom and Tony Cannon, have always been the left and right hand of the organization in terms of what the public sees, right? So now there's no spotlight for these games, and last time we were here, I mentioned how great it was for EVO Online to shout out the games that were featured, right? There's a conversation about which games should or shouldn't have been there, right? You know, whether or not a certain game got snubbed or not. But the fact is that the 4 games that were confirmed for EVO Online were all previously kind of not present or didn't have as much screen time. You know, Mortal Kombat was there, but they weren't the main stage event of EVO at any given year. So we had this situation where a lot of very interesting communities were coming together to actually get the biggest spotlight that they potentially ever could have gotten. And now they don't. They just simply don't, because it's better that we don't support the organizers of said event, regardless of the motive, right? And we can kind of dismiss all the net play concerns now, because at this point we knew it was going to work. Over 1,000 people had registered for the NA brackets for each respective game. Pretty sure all of them were over 1,000 registrants. So people were down for this. This was an online major. We were all there for it. You know, sponsors were in, commentary was there, players were hype. It was supposed to happen. And instead, what's come to light is this culture that EVO has allowed to exist for so long, and not only that, has permeated in other communities and has thrived because other communities are actually just like this. You know, a lot of the communities that support EVO are, unfortunately, how do I say it? You know, they have their own skeletons in their closet, and because of that, we now need to take it all apart and just start analyzing and start rebuilding it. So, I do want to ask you, Blue, since I brought you onto the show. I know that you've been present. I will say that one of the biggest things about this that I want to hear your commentary on is I know that you've been to a lot of these majors, right? Tell the people, where have you been in terms of FGC majors?
All right, so I was at EVO from 2014 to 2018. I was at Final Round from 2014 to about 2017. I was at Combo Breaker the last two. I was at CO the first time last year. I worked backstage the last Capcom Cup Finals in LA. I've been to Fall Classic a few times. I've been to the Xanadu, where many of the skullduggery accusations apparently come from on the Smash side. I heard Mobble's been getting dragged into it. One of our Mobble players is on blast right now for something or other. So, yeah, I've been around the block a long time at this point. It's actually pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things. Like, I know you for the fact that I can look up any given event. You've been commentary somewhere, or the fact that you worked on, you know, Capcom Cup. That's kind of what I want to ask you about, right? Like, when you see these allegations come out, right, and you as somebody who's been here and present in these scenes, been to EVO, been to Combo Breaker, been to these countless other majors, like, have you ever seen any of this? Do you really think that all of this is true? Like, as you on the ground, when somebody tells you this, can you say, yeah, I believe it? What do you think about all this?
I'm going to word this very carefully because for those who don't know, I'm a licensed mental health professional, and as such, I'm a mandated reporter.
Yeah.
I will tell you right now, if I saw anything suspect, I would let someone know.
Okay.
That's just part of what I do as a LMHP.
Okay.
I am obligated to do so working human services. So if I saw something directly, obviously I'd say, what the heck? And then I go to one of the organizers saying, hey, there's something going down over here. It looked kind of weird. You know anything about it, and something like that.
Okay.
As for I believe it, I mean, when there's so many people coming out at this, like, huge volume, I would have to think at least a quarter, and that's being very, 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 very understanding of the accused. I am believe of it is until proven guilty, but given the evidence I've seen, it's not looking very good. I would say a quarter if I heard about it. I would say, yeah, I can believe it.
Okay. Right. So you
Keep in
think
mind
that
the list is growing. I mean, it could all be true. It could all be not true. But for those that's currently true, I would say, yeah, I can.
Okay, so you and your experience as an attendee, you think that these kinds of things are enabled in that environment, right? Like I understand your point, right? That you mentioned that, you know, you as your responsibility would be to see if you see something to say something, but do you think that holds true for everybody else?
It's a real. I don't want to be judgmental of anybody. Not just for the accused and the accusers, but also the people just kind of hearing about it. There are definitely some who might enable it, but keep in mind a lot of these things happen in circles that I am not privy to. I can tell you one thing I really liked about being at Capcom Cup was that everyone there was there strictly on business. No one wanted to be caught slipping because of how much of their brand hinged on how they did that week. So
Right.
I like that about Capcom Cup because it was all business. As someone who is, again, a supervisor, I can respect that. I kind of felt at home talking to everybody, knowing everyone there for the same reason, which was to press button. But for other events, especially EVO, because Las Vegas, you know, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas,
Stays in
things like
Vegas.
that.
Right.
A lot of things happen behind, like in the hotel rooms at closed door. Obviously, things happening on the ballroom floor in front of everybody. That'd be ridiculous.
Right.
But in terms of like what's happening in the hotel rooms and at the bars, I mean, we had the incident of the bars last year, so obviously that happened.
Right.
Like anything, we have large gatherings, and obviously anime cons are full of this. There's a lot of suspect stuff going on that you're not privy to. I cannot say it personally, but I believe, yes, all these things, at least a quarter of them probably happened as a
Right.
and that's not me disrespecting the people who have been violated by whatever predator they're outing. That's just me saying I can believe it's happening at least that much, like the very, very minimum.
Okay, right. So you think it's definitely something that's persisted in the community, or something that has been
Yes.
perpetuated, even, right? Not even, and you bring up a really good point about Capcom Cup, because I really wanted to touch on that, right? So what we've come to understand basically at this point is that in a lot of communities where majors are part of their lives, right? Because a lot of these stories are kind of like, you have, like, one of the things we notice is the players and the victims, right? But we also the venues, right? And I mentioned this on Twitter, and I want to say it again. When I read these stories, not even just about EVO, but about the Smash scene, about all these predators that are coming out that we can no longer support, and all these people, you notice, like, have you ever stopped and realized where these things are taking place, right? Like, a lot of these stories were like CEO, right? Or a lot of these stories were EVO, or even just like Xanadu, or you know, a lot of these large gatherings that have this culture, right? And it's difficult, right? Because on one hand, I really hate to hear people, first of all, like, um, how do I say it? I really hate to hear stories of people taking advantage of places like CEO in particular, because at least for me, I know that, you know, Jabali, to hear about these things, right? For him to hear that these things happened adjacent to his event is probably very heavy on him. And, you know, for his support for Power Rangers back at CEO Taku, you know, he's on my side of the court. And I think that honestly, if he had known about this stuff, he wouldn't have allowed it. So there is a culture that, you know, this is a problem that even TOs are waking up to, apparently.
I can tell you, at least on Xanadu, I did come across an article with one of the organizers, Gimir.
Yeah.
But he already had the receipt saying not happen in that way, and I'm inclined to believe him because he did have more evidence than most others saying no, they're lying or whatever.
Right.
And everyone else who I know as part of the Xanadu crew, like the main organizers, like Rugal, I don't get that impression of them being involved or associating with what was going on with, for example, with Senpai and Puppa.
Right.
I think that was a complete shocker to many people.
And a lot of this is happening close to home for you, right?
It is. Xanadu is, at this point, my closest venue because my local one, the Forge, shut down with COVID, and it's not going to come back no matter what.
Right.
So really, Xanadu is the next closest one, about 2 hours and change up, like the Baltimore area.
Right. So, you know, like, you're telling me, right? This sort of thing is happening, and all these venues have to, you know, tackle it in their own unique ways, right? Because all of these stories are different. And just going back to what you mentioned about the Capcom Cup, now we got to ask ourselves, right? Like, how do we conduct ourselves in these environments moving forward, right? A lot of these places have, like, because when you sit down and actually go to any given local and you look around, right, and you see that there's there's one big problem, and I think it's the fact that minors are not appropriately accounted for. At least in my analysis, like, a lot of these stories about minors going there unattended, or, you know, being preyed upon by these terrible people that we're finding out about, like, there's no standard for these things currently. There's really no kind of control over it, which is kind of a shocker, but also not a shocker. You ever sat down at a local and ever asked yourself, like, you know, there's alcohol over there, there's minors over there. There's not a whole lot in terms of control going on here. So a lot of these places now have to like reevaluate their way of thinking, don't you think?
This is. I'm listening to what you're saying. I need to think about how I'm going to answer this.
Yeah.
Every venue has their own set of rules. There was one I was in that didn't involve alcohol, period. Others were specifically meant to be family friendly.
Right.
And it wasn't like modern super close, but it was in a part of town where if something were to happen, you could easily call someone saying, "Hey, this is going down. Come on over," or whatever.
Right.
As for Xanadu, I can tell you that I seriously doubt. This is probably not where we're going with it, but some listeners might think you are. So let me say this real quick. Nothing is happening, at least in my opinion. Or if it is happening, it's very rare. All these horrible things happen like straight up on the floor. It's not like there's a whole bunch of people just kind of gathering around hiding it as it's happening at the venue.
Okay, right.
I think because just the nature of accusations, the fact that everyone's coming out about it rather than everyone like reporting to the police and stuff just shows like the covert nature of it. Obviously, if it happened right on the stage or whatever, you would have heard like law enforcement get involved right then and there.
Right.
Right.
So I think that is not the issue you have to worry about in that regard. It's you have to be mindful of your surrounding, which is true, but be mindful that you need to keep eyes on how people react with certain people or act around certain people. As a TO, and also as a player, I've been accused of starting trouble. Not anything like that, mind you, but just like agitating people, getting on people's nerves, stuff like that. One time, me and another guy got so agitated at each other, we almost like threw hands at each other, and I just like left the scene for like 3 or 4 months to focus on EVO as a player, so I didn't have the distraction of just having that kind of tension around me at my local.
Right.
You have to keep eyes, and my friend was the TO, and he broke it down to me very clearly. I want to help you, and these people don't know your story. Just keep your head down from now on. The reason he's telling me that is because he's my friend. He's saying it because at the time I was a constant source of drama, whether intended or not. And he had to make a call as a TO to tell me to tone down, and I respect that. As TOs, we need to be mindful of how other people interact with each other and see these signs. Obviously, the videos have come out of, for example, Senpai and Puppa, and some of the suspicious looks. One party, I believe, Senpai giving to Puppa. I'm probably saying his name wrong, but you know what I'm talking about.
No, yeah, I think it's right.
Yeah. You have to be mindful of those things, and rather than just kind of keep it to yourself, if you have no inkling, you're just saying, "Huh, weird." You're not like entitled to do it, but if you do suspect something, just let the TO know, "I don't like how this was at the other one," and they might come to her saying, "Hey, what's going on here?" And if they suspect foul play, they say, "This, you can't be here."
Right. Okay, so yeah, that's a really good point when we talk about these things, because at least personally, at least in a lot of the conversation that we've had, like, you know, it's well and good. Just to recap, right? It's well and good for us to realize that these things happen adjacent to majors, right? And that tournament organizers collectively evaluate themselves, and players included in this, right? TOs, players, whoever, evaluate themselves and say, okay, how do we make sure this stuff doesn't happen again? Who do I need to be watching? What do I need to be watching? Right? That's great, but you bring up an important point. This stuff doesn't happen right on the floor, you know, next to the Tekken setup or whatever. That's just not how these things are run, right? Like,
All right, we have Tekken pools right here. We got Street Fighter 5 pools over here. We have diddling right here.
Exactly. Right, like it just doesn't happen that way. You know, that's a great point.
A fucking bracket of 8 and shit. Fuck, man.
Yeah, no, but that's correct.
There's Arcana Heart.
Oh yeah, you know, right, like just in a line. They're all lined up.
Jesus. EVOs.
Wow. Okay, this is.
Oh, you gotta come after Arcana Heart.
It has to be right at the end. It's got to be there.
I
No,
have a
but
question though.
yeah, go
Actually,
aliens. Tell me.
because Shib mentioned something about culture. Now, Blue, being that you've been involved for such a long time and have been involved in administrative capabilities, right, in the backstage and everything, what do you say to that? Is it really cultural? Because me personally, I'll say this: I've been playing fighting games for a long time, but I don't consider myself a member of FGC. So me on the outside looking in, if you're reading this stuff, like, okay, well, is it something that um, is you can call cultural, or is it based upon stereotypes that are already held towards people of that community? I mean, how do you look at it? What do you say? Do you think it's a cultural thing? Is it based on the stereotypes that maybe certain members might be of this how can you say, this type of personality or presentation of themselves or whatever, right? What do you think? Do you think is it a cultural thing? Is it appropriate to say it's a cultural thing? Or what do you think sort of enables it, aside from the fact that it might be people that are in positions of influence or power that may be taking advantage of that or suppressing that? What do you think? Do you think it is a cultural issue or what?
I'm munching on my words on this.
Uh huh.
In regards to, I take it you're talking about EVO.
Overall, just
Yeah.
overall, people that like anime or
I'm gonna
Right,
start
okay.
with the EVO one, then we're gonna trickle down.
okay.
I am not one for gossip. I think it's a very harmful thing to do if you have no backing. Obviously, with Wiz, there had been murmurs I'd heard about him being a certain way because I talked about other people, but I just thought the extent of it was just that he liked dudes and that was it. All this other
Mhm.
stuff was complete shocker. I'm not a shocker, I guess, but it wasn't something we thought was that bad, like was getting to that point.
Right.
Mhm.
Obviously, if someone had like a receipt saying this is going on, someone would have said something.
Right.
It's hard to keep something like that at an event like that completely on the down low and not have it bloated because like all the as you've seen like with the stuff going on at the EVO after party last year, it seems we're never in the news for good things.
Right.
So if word like in receipts came out of Wiz doing these things like so much sooner, you would have heard about it.
I do want to make a
w-
distinction that I think is important. A lot of the stories that came out regarding Mr. Wiz's behavior actually took place at an arcade from his local area. And that's kind of where things get complicated, right? Because so I talked to people about this who have worked on EVO proper, who no longer
Yes.
work at EVO. Okay, do not work at EVO currently, but I asked them, "What do you think?" And the first thing they said is that there's no way that Tom and Tony Khan would have allowed this to fly if they knew about this, right? And I said, you're right. If they knew about this, that would either be a serious indictment of their character or they actually didn't know, because that's a major problem. And
Right.
kind of the problem there is that factor, right? Like this didn't the pool stuff that came out, right, about him giving tokens to kids or whatever was apparently at an arcade that wasn't even anywhere adjacent to the EVO, Vegas area. Which, I mean, I guess, but it explains one part, right? Which is like, how is it, if Tony and Tom Cannon knew about this, did they cover it up? Yeah, probably not. They probably didn't know, which is crazy to me. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything else to say about that, Blue.
I don't think I don't know them well enough to say one way or the other.
Right.
I think at the time, whatever they were privy to was they felt within. It's not a whistleblow yet. I think the fact that it had gotten that bad might have been a surprise to them.
Right.
I don't know them well enough. I didn't interact with them or Wizard enough because, as you might have gathered, me and Wiz didn't like the same game, so I had no point talking to him.
Right.
So I didn't really engage with him. I was looking at who was saying about being FGC. For me, it's just something that kind of came along one day. I want to press buttons. I want to be closer to the people who are involved in my favorite games. And for that, it just kind of went hand in hand for me to start being part of the FGC in a more active role. Otherwise, my games would just dry up, and I wasn't ready to put them down yet.
Right.
So by matter of necessity, and in the end, this is what FGC is supposed to be. You find people who play your games. All the other stuff, the clout chasing and things like that, that stuff is beyond me. If I'm chasing clout, it is solely, again, to get closer to the people involved in my favorite
Right.
games so I can ask my own questions. Like, for example, when I worked backstage at Capcom Cup, I talked to Ono, I talked to Nakayama. Nakayama, by the way, made all of SNK's Golden Era games for Move to Capcom.
Right.
And I just talked to him about stuff like that, and that gave me an opportunity to do it. So naturally, if the opportunity comes up, I'll do it again.
Yeah, naturally.
But some people aren't satisfied with just that. They want to have like the fame. They want to have what Sonic Fox has, where he's on ESPN, or the E-League Awards, or how LTG and Rob TV and Commander Jesse were on E-League and stuff like that. They want the fame and the fortune, which is okay. It's the somewhere in between where you let the clout kind of get to your head in a way where you forget why you're there. And I can't speak about. Let's go back to the culture part. I think that I got sidetracked.
No, yeah, I think that's really important to kind of emphasize.
The culture, I think it's kind of like a spin-off of con culture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I've heard a lot of really, really wild stories about anime cons for the last 10 years. And I stopped going actively around the time I graduated college because I just felt I outgrew it.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not exactly the only one from the sound of things, especially because fighting games came back. I just kind of went there when I was in college because we're also going to press buttons in 2006.
Right.
There was an arcade that was like an hour bus ride, but I kept getting car sick on it, and there's nothing else to do in the meantime if you're just a poor college kid except save up for a cheap ticket to a local con. But I do know that in terms of the fighting game scene, I did see a very big change in attitude, especially when anime games started getting really big.
Yeah.
Like, it felt like, at first, a lot of the anime stuff was kind of kept in a corner, I guess.
Right.
But once Infinite came and went, and Fighter Z put its foothold in there, it did feel like there was a big shift in terms of like who was coming, what the attitudes were.
Okay.
It felt more suspect, I guess. It just felt like there was this shift, and I did touch upon this when I was kind of thinking about how it got this bad, and this is when it hit. Think about what the Smash scene is known for in terms of reputation around its players. They're poorly kept. They have bad hygiene. They're rude. They're immature.
Right.
They
all these things we pin on the Smash community.
Yes. Now, and there are many people in the anime community who are very similar.
Mhm.
Like the caricature of Filthy Frank's Weeaboo song.
Right.
We've all met people like that.
Right.
And then you now have this the influx of furries. Obviously, I joked that when Sonic Fox rose up the way he did, I posted a picture saying congratulations, we're one step closer to NBA Jam with 4 furries facing off in the finals. But, and by the way, I have nothing against Dom. I think he's well-meaning, so I have nothing against him. I think, and I'm going to try words as best I can.
Right.
EVO made a big push, especially in the last 3 years or so, to bring in your outcast, bring in your bullied, bring in your downtrodden, bring in the others who
Right.
felt like they didn't belong,
Like not
and you can
Capcom,
belong here.
right? Is
And
it fair to say that you mean like bringing in people who weren't necessarily adjacent to the Capcom FGC? Because that's kind of what happened, right?
yeah, Capcom and to a lesser extent Tekken are just kind of like regular people in a way, in terms of like how they look and present themselves.
Right.
Probably because most of them are like old people, I guess, like in their 30s and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
They're not youngins like people coming to Dragon Ball and stuff. Other than like guys like Koichi's been around forever playing random anime stuff at the arcade. But yeah, I think a lot of that kind of created an environment where these people, they're vulnerable because they've never been accepted anywhere else.
Okay.
Many of them, and you can look on social media, many of them are like constantly negative about like many things.
Mm-hmm.
You always see tweets about them being unhappy, and I'm very sorry that all of this, if this was the thing that made them happy, that they betrayed their trust this way. I mean, we could all find other hobbies, but for many people, as you said, this is more than a hobby. It is their only way where they feel like they belong.
Right.
And that's how I think this guy's Bassett did, because all these interesting individuals who didn't have anywhere else to go or felt like they belonged anywhere else were willing to get, not willing, I guess, but were vulnerable to get exploited by those who would prey upon their need to be accepted.
Okay. Right, that's fair. And you think that I heard this in a couple of other places. I heard the same idea, that the fact is that with the uncontrolled growth of the FGC, and yeah, Evo's own marketing has something of a hand in that, right? As soon as we started kind of realizing that the mainstream was going to fall away from not necessarily away from Bandai Namco as a publisher, but away from Capcom, like Street Fighter wasn't the thing all of a sudden. So there were a lot of people who had, very little experience in the community who just flooded this place and started playing and started going to these after parties and started networking with these people, and it all just kind of goes out of control, right? Because there's not many people who have been in the FGC for a long time who are sitting here and saying, be careful what you do at EVO, because next thing you know, you're going to be in a very bad position because there's a lot of weirdos. People don't really say that about EVO, at least I feel. People, there's only ever good things to say,
Anything
right?
in Vegas.
Right. There's only ever good things to say, right? And I heard this from Smash commentators. They said that one commentator in particular, whose name escapes me right now, said that he had a very bad exchange with Mr. Wizard himself. But he said, I went to EVO even after that. I did EVO that year, and he said, I went to EVO every year after that too because it's not just about him. I want to leave a good impression because everybody else is fine. But there's something of a flawed thing about that. It's okay to do those things, but it's also probably better to tell somebody about these situations as well. And I think that's a big failure of the culture that's been created, right? Like, people don't know what's right or wrong in these situations. There's no telling what's right or wrong. There's no telling what a well-run event is or what it isn't, because the only thing we know is what has existed for years and years and years now. I posit that has started to change because of the renewed importance of places like Combo Breaker. They've now kind of like every year they get bigger and every year they kind of have more influence. And at least in personal experiences, Rick seems like a decent understander of the situation and what's going on. And CEO as well. Even though a lot of these accusations came out about CEO, I think Jabali probably cares a lot. Go ahead.
Hold on about CEO.
Tell me, what do you think?
Remember 2018 when Kenny Omega hired a sex offender as a jobber?
Yes, I remember that.
You remember how we kind of had an attitude about it?
Yes.
And then think about the SoCal clique. There was, by the way, for those who don't know, about a week or so before the big FG blow up and Smash blow up, there was a wrestling blow up where like 40 people plus, there might have been more last I checked, were getting implicated for the exact same kind of stuff we're talking about right now.
Okay.
a number of people in that elite clique, Marty Skrull, Joey Ryan, were caught, and they had receipts of them doing this stuff. So, as we talk about Jabali, I did hear there might be more coming out about CEO
Okay.
in general. So we'll get back to that if more comes out. But let's
It's
focus
interesting.
on-
That's a good point, right? Like
Yeah.
nobody's absolved of this yet, right? To be clear,
Yeah.
right? Like there are things that we're looking at, and places that we're trying to see the better in these situations, but nobody's absolved yet. There's a lot of things that are going to be called out even now,
Yeah,
right?
it's developing. It's a developing story.
It's a developing story. This
Rapidly
podcast hasn't
developing story.
recorded in like a couple weeks now, and this thing's still going on. It's just crazy. But
It's not going to stop either.
that's
anytime soon.
it just goes to show the scale of the problem, right? The amount of people involved in this. Now, I
would say,
yeah, sure.
in regards to the accusation and the environment being set up, I think a lot of it also had to do with Wiz. And there's a saying we have: sometimes the dog that barks the loudest, that's the one that's the most guilty.
Mhm.
Think about how much EVO, especially in the last few months, last year or so, would always champion stuff about this doesn't represent your core values, or this doesn't
Right.
do this or that, or you're out of line or whatever. Even though
Right.
he had no place to get involved in what was generally two people. For example, LTG and Zero. They're both idiots, mind you.
Right. I personally didn't really like either side of that story, but I know where
They're
you're going
both-
with this.
No, they're both idiots. I think Zero might be the big one because Zero had like the high ground, and then Zero just chose to open her mouth and make it worse, and suddenly all the heat on LTG just completely turned around.
Right.
But we're not talking about that. That's them being dummies. The issue is we love, as the FGC, and this is a close thing I probably attest to.
Right.
We love drama like it's in. And Mr. Wiz and the other T and some other TO, I'm not saying they're doing Mr. Wiz stuff, but just in general, TOs in general, they kind of feed into
The
like
stigmas.
the stigmas.
Right.
And I think there needs to be like a tier list of this is so and so ban. Obviously, if someone says something out of line, you got to sit them in timeout and stuff. This
Right.
is so and so many months, so and so many years. This is never coming back, and you're going to have the cops called on you, or things like that. There needs to be levels, but I don't think the FGC in general understands that as TOs, we're in a tight spot to determine what the extent of it is. We don't want to let our own subjectivity get in the way of like what it actually is. The FGC in general, just the players and stuff, aren't as understanding. They say ban forever, permaban, or get them or hit them on site. I've seen that thrown around by some people because people are talking that big junk, But for whatever reason, there needs to be a general understanding, and I think this is where things really fell off. You are not there to take your problems with you. You are there to put your problems aside. Many people, and I think this is the side effect of being opening to like the bully, the downtrodden, the vulnerable, they take their issues with them because they have nowhere else to take them. When in truth it should be put all those things aside, forget about it. We don't care who you are, where you're from, what you did, as long as you press buttons.
Right. And I think that's kind of like a side effect of the culture that we have now, right? Like even I'm suspect. The fact is that a lot of these people who play fighting games, or in this, and there's good intentions, but all these people who play fighting games or end up at tourneys or even at Capcom Cup, as you mentioned, they're streamers, they're content creators, they're Twitter personalities. Yeah, like they purposefully extract what happens at these places and take them outside so that they can create, more clout for themselves, as you mentioned. And when they go back in, they're, the gods, as it were. We talk about various scenes having their respective gods and respective top players and things like that. And that doesn't happen if, this culture doesn't allow it, right? Like if people aren't taking it out or taking it in, then that never happens. But it becomes bigger than just the venue, I think, at this point, right?
It's something you're allowed to take. You know me. You know I'm a big Hero Cross Tekken player.
Yeah.
And you know I take pride in what I've done in that game, either as a commentator, organizer, a player, and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm not going to say it's bad, right? Like, there are very
Yeah.
good intentions to do so, but the fact is that this has happened, right? Like,
Yeah.
in our support of our scenes, we've taken it out of the venue and we've put it on the internet, or we've put it on our stream channels or whatever, and a lot of these people don't check themselves when they do that. So it's dangerous to prop up people. Diz, what do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, like, we as a community, sometimes we as a society have a bit of a like beef-based economy.
Okay.
So what happens is that ends up causing, like, having things be promoted is a good thing, but a lot of times the things that are promoted are via negativity, via.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's not that I'm good, it's that I'm better than this guy. Like, it always comes out like that. It's never
Controversy, man.
yeah.
Controversy
Controversy is what sells, and I understand that's any news is good news. Jerry Jones, but like
Jerry Jones.
but
Hey, how about that Brian Scalabrine?
Right.
Hey,
It,
good news, right? You can hype up like an actual good white player. You want to hype up this random guy as the GOAT. Because he was controversy, like low tier god.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, Low Tier God's honestly a perfect example. Like, he would have probably faded to obscurity if the people weren't so addicted to dunking on him.
Yep. Yeah. No,
And that's just we as a community. That's just we as a community are, and that's the culture that we present. That's what hype inherently is for some reason, right? Like,
We love clowns. That is the honest truth. Think about LeVar Ball.
yes.
Think about how many people stood up for LeVar Ball, even when you could even use like that video of Senpai. And I hate to compare this guy to Senpai, but work with me here.
All right.
okay, I'm working with you.
Alright.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that actually I heard he might have done something to somebody, so I might be getting ahead of myself. But anyway, think about when the LeVar Ball thing first started, and hyping up Lonzo and all the memes that came after it. Like they had one where they gave like a Goku wig, and they kind of like paraphrased his word and how it worked for, like the Cell games, Lonzo being Gohan. It was funny for a bit, but there was something that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar said, and I love. I have his jersey, and he was a big influence for me growing up. Because he had just retired, I was getting the basketball. He said this: "Do not let this man anywhere near the NBA." And he was like drop dead serious. People called him a hater, but
He's a serious guy.
But for me, it's like Kareem. If he says that, and he rarely talks about anybody, much less some random goon, you pay attention. And I did. I saw a father that was clearly exploiting his children and dictating their lives in a very unfair way. And as someone who works with children, young adults, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But no, everyone said you're just being a hater because you're white or whatever. Like, no, I'm being a hater because as an adult with a conscience, I get weird vibes from this guy the more I watch him, especially after he got drafted. And sure enough, his family has disowned him because of all the stuff that Kareem warned was going to happen. Now, let me tie it into the other situation.
Right.
There are obviously videos of Senpai giving Papa some very suspect looks. So, you see these potential signs, you wonder what's going on here. And you don't have anyone really saying, this is really weird. Maybe we should say something or bring up somebody. Because obviously, I mean, for me, if I suspect anything going on with any of my clients, I have to call CPS the next day. Like anything, if I suspect anything, I have to make a call. And if CPS finds nothing, no worries. If it's just my imagination. But even if I suspect an inkling, I have to call CPS. I don't know how it is in, like, if you're like a store owner or whatever. maybe there's some statute where they have to do this, report these things. I wouldn't be shocked if there was. But yeah, most people don't register that. Just kind of say it's not my business or whatever.
Do you think most people recognize it? Because, like you mentioned, right, Blue, you're a trained professional, right? You're a professional at this, so you are trained to understand and see the cues. Do you think it might be that most people in these environments don't recognize it more so because they already see it as something as normal, like a normal sort of behavior? Because I remember,
I think they don't recognize because they're still too young to do it.
Right.
Because there's so many young people, especially in Smash. I mean, Smash is it's a game with like Mario and Kirby and stuff like that. No matter what the edgelords might tell you, no matter what the edgelords might tell you, it is for children.
Yes.
Right.
No matter what, all your
Mario is the true old head.
Sorry,
I don't know what you're talking about.
all your Fire Emblem / fanfic writers and all the
all that stuff isn't.
All the people shipping Link with Captain Falcon or whatever, wherever else you want to do it with. It's not what it's actually about.
Right.
That's your headcanon. Nintendo, it's a kids franchise.
Exactly.
And naturally, it's going to attract kids. And kids and teenagers, just by nature of being kids and teenagers, don't have the mental capacity to understand watching from other people the alert signs going off. Some people have it instantly, but obviously they don't know what to do with it because again,
they're naive.
I would say that is a big issue, but the fact that they're also being dropped into an environment where, as you said, the bullied, the downtrodden, but like some of them, there's cases of mental issues. There are cases of like actually not being able to recognize social cues or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm technically in that boat. I'm on the autism spectrum. That's how. So ending up having all sorts of these types of interactions. Sometimes it would look clear cut from a distance, but it ends up being this is just a crazy microcosm of this is a crazy microcosm of interactions that kind of just would not happen normally, brought on by the state of what the communities are, and you see it the most. And you sort of see it the most in Smash, just because the likelihood of that combination is the highest there.
Mm-hmm.
So, first off, I'm really glad you said that. I have a master's in autism, and that's my main focus as LMHP. So, first off, I'm glad you're doing as well as you are. Thank you for admitting that to me. And you are absolutely right. They don't have the social. That many of them, especially at that age, obviously as adults, we kind of learned if we gotten this far in life. Yeah, I'm on the spectrum too. If we got this far in life, then we know eventually how to deal with it and cope with it. Mm-hmm. But for them who are young, they haven't figured that out yet. That's kind of why they wound up there, because it was an outlet for them to kind of be them in ways the classroom and the playground weren't doing it for them.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then there are other people that are just like them.
That exactly. And on paper, we actually have social skills groups at my office. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to get that back running because now COVID's kind of in a weird spot right now. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. But yeah, it's on paper. If you're a parent, you want them to be around other kids. You want to be other peers because they weren't doing school and stuff. Mm-hmm. But the fact that it's not being regulated by, for example, me or another staff member who obviously knew for a long time and wouldn't even think about doing this, ideally. I've heard some people in my field maybe not, but that's not here nor there. Rotten eggs in every basket. But in that situation, there's nothing like that. It's just a store owner and dozens of people. Right. I mean, my old venue, the Forge, I've seen it just packed Smash people on Smash Day. I was there picking up something I left the day before, and there were like 70 people there on a Sunday morning. And I'm like, why is it so busy? And that's I'm told it's a normal Sunday for them because Smash is just so prominent and so big that it's hard to maintain. Some of them do have some way to maintain it. the Forge actually worked actively with UMFS, a private school that was nearby that had a program like that. One of our best players was staff there, and I actually met his. I don't know if it's wife yet or just his fiance, but I learned she was in the same field that I was just by talking to her. We were at EVO together, all three of us, and I actually wound up getting her a job at my company at that time. So some places have like people who can say, no, this is not right, and recognize those signs.
Right.
But for a video game cafe to have that all the time, that's kind of unreasonable when you think about it, because it's not the intention of it. It's just the way the demographic kind of worked out.
Yeah, it's just the way it kind of played out, right? Like, and I think that's important though, right? Because when we talk about, EVO Online is canceled for these reasons, and it has these problems. Now, moving forward, right? What do we do? Just to kind of like recap, just to kind of wrap it all up. What do we really do? We have to recognize the culture, right? And there's a million reasons why. It seems like there's a lot of. The fact is that at any given FGC event, there are going to be things that we encounter there and hardly anywhere else because of the nature of it. Like, it's like convention culture, but it happens every week, and there's just a million other people, and it costs a lot less money. So
it's the Wild West.
Yeah, exactly. It's a Wild West of kind of like interactions that we don't even necessarily have that much experience in identifying. That's an interesting, line of study.
Do you think? I mean, this might be a little too much. Do you think there needs to be some sort of governing body? Because FGC is so big and incorporates so many different games. I mean,
I want to say this.
Smash had a governing body. You see how that went.
Exactly. I was going to say that. So let's talk about that, right? Because that's the big question now. All the TOs are getting together, and there's a bit of flawed thinking because these TOs, like, when you hear about a story about something that happened at CEO, it didn't happen at CEO. It happened in the hotel rooms, right?
Right.
That's outside of the TO's jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Now, the after party, maybe not, right? Because I do feel like they're organized by very clear people, and I feel like
that's true.
That one, maybe I'm not not a lawyer, I don't know, but maybe those we do need to look at. But like the ones that take place in like hotel rooms or outside of the venue, like, you can't do anything there, unfortunately. The most that you can do is, the one powerful tool that the tournament organizer has is the right to admission, right?
Right.
So you decide what this is like going back to things like infiltration, right? Like infiltration was at EVO, make no mistake. But if you have someone like that, right, who went through the legal process and was absolved of the accusations against them through the legal process, well, by right of admission, you don't have to let them in, right?
Yeah.
There's a tool that you have where you can create a culture where you say, regardless of what the circumstances are, that you are making this place feel unsafe, and unfortunately you are not welcome for XYZ reasons, right? That's every TO can do that just by the nature of a private event working the way it does. But now the question is, okay, so do we do a code of conduct? Do we have people who decide, bans? Do we have stuff like that? And Diz brought it up, right? Like, immediately you say, oh, well, Smash has had a COC and Smash has had a governing body for a really long time, and that didn't help. It didn't stop,
But are those professionals that are involved? Like, for
No.
example, like Psychoblue.
No.
Psychoblue is a professional individual, right?
I don't know.
Qualifications,
I don't know who the head of the governing body for Smash is, but my initial answer is no, right? Because if
it's
it's just
on the level like the NBA Players Association, like,
right, it's
you want to have like those player committees like Ultra Dave wanted for balancing Street Fighter 5. Only we're just balancing skullduggery among our community.
yeah, we're putting out the patch notes.
Man.
I guess.
Speaking from the Awesomeness community, the player run balance initiative freaking never worked out.
That's ridiculous. Oh, also, I wanna take a really brief reprieve to mention to Diz that your next Disness title has to be Beef Base Economy. I was gonna forget if I didn't say something. Beef Base Economy is really good. No, but yeah, so code of conduct. So I'll say this because I've said it elsewhere, and I think it would probably be good for me to like put it on a video somewhere. If you ask me, a code of conduct's great, right? Because it kind of like it tells people how they should behave, and in speaking to organizers, what they tell me is that, whether or not it changes, the enforcement is one thing, but the fact is that when people have a clear code of conduct to read, it instills, a message to them, right? Like, it tells them going in how they should act, and that kind of changes their mentality. I guess so, right? Like, it's better to have these things visible and legible. One of the things that strikes me about code of conducts is that, well, one, every code of conduct is different. They're not very long, but they're all different depending on where you go. And two, there's no common ground, I would say. So, you go sign up for a Smash GG page, like now that we're all in our houses because of COVID, right? Then, you want to play a net play tournament. Okay, so you go to Smash GG and you look for your tournament, and then you sign up, right? And there's a bunch of forums, and then you go to this Discord and you go to this channel. Well, that process is always different where you go, like depending on where you are. Like maybe you have to go to this channel, maybe you have to go to this one, to this Discord, the other. So there's every place has a different set of standards that you have to follow. The responsibility is on the player to read them and to be informed, but we could be doing a better job, if you ask me, about identifying behavior, identifying the code of conduct, where you can find it, who enforces it, because we can't make like a governing body, because I think the obvious reason is that nobody's going to overstep the management of like EVO. Like we can make a governing body, but if we tell, EVO that they have to ban this player, they're going to laugh at us, right? They're not going to do that. That's not how it works. Right. So instead, there needs to be an effort to kind of like, I guess, how would I say it? Like,
privatize.
I guess advertise or visualize at a venue, like, here's the standards that we go by, right? Because when you walk up to like EVO, I guarantee you they don't give you a paper with the COC. Like, it doesn't have to be a paper even. Like, but I guarantee you that they don't do that part. They don't they don't verify or provide you with as many tools as possible, so you say, okay, I know what the rules are here. There's a rule that you have to be at your pool by this time. There's a rule of how to play the game, but how do you behave around other people? That's what's missing, right?
That is true.
That I think is something that we could work on going forward. And I know that, at least personally, that Ultra David has been kind of invested in seeing this through. But we'll really see what happens and who ends up deciding. I think a governing body would probably be a waste of our time. I think we just need to we need to go out to our TOs and help them be part of the effort instead.
That I think you're in that chat too. With all the TOs, COs
I am.
Stuff. That is so chaotic.
It is. It is chaotic.
So I hope whatever comes of it is somewhat helpful, but most of this stuff, I think, can again go back to the fact that these are privately run, and unfortunately, if you determine someone being there is going to cause more trouble than it's worth, tell him go elsewhere. You have the right to deny him service.
Right.
And from there, you just proceed forward. If he hates the rest of his life, good for him. But you have to do what needs to be done. And as a TO, our responsibility is to use our judgment as objectively as possible. And sometimes we have to just make a judgment call.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate that things have to get that
people
bad
are
at any point.
People are unfortunately very critical of judgment calls like that. When bans go out, temporary bans, permanent bans, whatever, people start having this conversation about standards. Like, completely disingenuous people, mind you, who are like, oh, why did this person get banned for this many times, but he did something worse, right? Like, why are these two the same? It's not that. It doesn't work like that, right? It's a judgment call. It is subjectively determined by that place as, under their set of conditions. Sure, there's things to be said on each side, but at the end of the day, this decision that is being made is just it's subjective. It is what it is. It's based on the evidence that they have for that given situation. It's not based on these standards. When people have these conversations, just talking to the FGC in general, when you hear this thing where somebody gets banned and then somebody says, why did this person get banned for the same amount of time for something else? Those things are not related. in any way, right? Like don't buy into that. That's not how it works. These things are completely separate.
Like we don't have the the punishment translation machine. Like we
we don't have the context, machine.
There's a rubric for that shit,
Exactly.
Right.
And I don't think there needs to be, right? Because there's a lot of different things that can be involved, right? There's just different standards, There's different things that we allow, whether or not a space is family friendly, whether or not one of the things that I said at the beginning of this stuff is like, okay, guys, if your FGC wants to crack open a 6-pack every time a bracket starts, that's fine. Do it. But be aware of, who is allowed and who is not allowed into these things, right? Like, at least personally, I go to my local. Okay, great. Time for Sam Show 7. There's beer. Every time.
Yeah.
Every time. That's
Well,
but everyone, yeah, right. But like everyone there is an adult, so I'm like, okay, well, everyone's an adult. Okay, right? We all understand, but that doesn't always happen. So there needs to be a careful outline of like who's welcome and who isn't, and it doesn't always work the same in every situation, right? That's for the player to be informed about.
Somehow Discords are more regulated than fighting game tournaments.
Yes.
Or locals, there's the NSFW zone,
and you go there to
you have to go through the bead curtain.
Exactly.
Yeah, get your boot pass.
Right.
But that's exactly right, and I think that touches on a lot of important things. So let's talk about what isn't canceled this year, if we will. Anime EVO.
Go for it.
Anime EVO is not canceled this year. So if anyone doesn't know, I will say it again because I've said it many times, but I feel like it needs to be said. Anime EVO is run independently of EVO. The volunteer staff that is helping with Anime EVO Online is not sourced from the usual people who are available at EVO. So what always happens for EVO is that there's a separate registration list for Anime EVO volunteers, and they get a bunch of people from North America or whatever who are going to go to EVO this year, and they help them, right? This year it's different because there's actually no there's no region requirement. Like if you're speaking from the perspective of the Anime EVO volunteer team, like tons of these people would never have been to EVO ever, I think. And I trust them for that reason. I trust Anime EVO going forward this year for that exact reason. Because if Anime EVO were going forward this year, but it was still being run by the usuals who run it at the physical event every year, I'd be a little suspect. Because those people, despite the fact that they are legally independent, right? I don't necessarily have to give them their trust for that reason. I can still question if their venue is being run correctly. I can still question whether or not their intentions are in the right place. But I think this year's a little different because the volunteer team are just people online who are able to play or who are able to run, and they can be any part of the world just as long as they can help out and put on the show, right? Mm-hmm. So what ends up happening is that a lot of these community leaders in their respective games, they offer themselves because they're in a position where they can help with the online aspect. They would never have been able to make it to EVO for whatever reason because they're too far, because they don't travel, whatever. So those community leaders, they've probably been sitting where they are for a few years now, maybe a couple of months, maybe a few years for whatever reason. But the point is that people kind of trust them already, and people kind of have this judgment already out for whether or not they can be trusted for their events, or they have previous experiences with their events. So, Anime EVO going through this year makes a lot of sense for me because a lot of the people involved are people we already trust, right, in our respective communities, per se. That's kind of my take on it. Blue, I don't know if you've ever had any experiences with the Anime EVO side of EVO. I don't know what you think about it. What do you think?
I have. I remember that I was the only one who brought a certain kind of CRT converter.
Okay.
And because of that, I had to miss Godsmack because I had to wait until North Star finished its foot stabbing exhibition on stage so I could finish Ninja Turtles. Which would have been done hours before if people actually brought some other than me.
All due respect, this sounds like the pettiest thing.
Look,
this is over Fist on the North Star and TMNT.
No, TMNT ran fine. Probably because I was the one running it.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah, fair enough.
But they gave me all these. I won't go into the. I'm getting upset thinking about it. I actually paid money it down. I had to try and get my ticket insurance back for it, and I was mad because I was excited for Godsmack.
Okay, yeah, they took this from this man. This is what they took.
All of my Dragon Ball Z AMVs I got on a video CD for really bad sub of GT decades ago, and list like things like Moon Baby and the stuff, or whenever they open.
You see what you have done?
Can't you see what you've taken?
But anyway, that part obviously twisted a different way. Other than that, I thought they did the best they could.
Okay.
I didn't get any particular suspect vibes other than one of the main organizers showing up super late. I think he got snookered the night before. I heard he was like so drunk that they thought he was going to die, is what I heard.
Oh shit! Okay.
But
dang,
it's Vegas, you know.
It's Vegas, yeah.
It's Vegas.
Yeah.
God, that's another problem with all this.
Alcohol is involved.
All through this, we just been like, it's Vegas.
It's Vegas, yeah. I mean, that's what you gotta consider. You know, you're going.
Why do you think it's called Sin City?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like you gotta ask yourself, well, why is this place in Vegas so full of suspect things going on, and why is this other place that's not in Vegas not full of suspect? Oh, well, you know, there must be one factor here that it's in Vegas, right? It's you know, that I think, unfortunately, you know, if people want to have that, they can have that. They're all adults; they can spend their money wherever they want, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, being the mecca of fighting games has bitten us in the ass because of specifically that, right? Because people want that experience, but don't realize the importance that we put on it. Or they do, right? I remember when EVO got canceled the first time, the physical venue, and the first tweet I saw on my timeline said, "Shout out to everybody who was going to EVO just to party." And I said, yeah. You know,
that's already a bad look.
And that was like, and no, people were laughing about this. I remember the same people, I'll tell you right now, the same people who were saying, like, you know, oh, you know, EVO shouldn't be this way, and we need to reform. They were there when it got canceled, saying, oh, you know, I was gonna go hang out with my bros at EVO. You know, I really wish we were gonna be able to party this year. Sorry, guys. You know, like, I remember the hand wringing. Don't think I don't remember. I recalled it. I was like, hey, wait a minute.
Don't call them out, but
to be fair,
beef-based economy. Don't.
I can't wag my finger too much because that same weekend, after I finished running Cross Tekken, I was trying to find the Marvel suite, but it was hard to do because all of elevators were card locked. So I was looking for somebody, and then I decided to go see a Michael Jackson show instead. So you might just go for like the stage shows and whatever.
Right.
But the same But the fact, anyway, there's the point though. The fact that you're in Vegas, where there is like all the gambling and all of the call girls, the call girls and the gigolos and whatever, and all the people and all the suspect things like the booze or the drugs or the fact that you have strip clubs like every other block or whatever, well within your price range depending where you are, and all these high rollers and possibly criminal-looking guys right next to you as you're on your way to the venue, it can make kind of a mixed reaction for young people.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
So I understand completely why people want to party. Unfortunately, you have to choose one or the other.
Yes.
One thing, you're all adults. On the other thing, not everyone there is, and that is the reality. It's still video games, and while we have hobbies,
no matter what, y'all are playing video games.
You know, I do say though that I think that's kind of a conception that does us no good. because
That is, okay, actually, yeah.
because I said this on Twitter.
The Gears community having to deal with this.
I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Is a dedicated M-rated series community having to deal with something like this?
Yeah, Mortal Kombat is right now, actually.
Well, yeah, Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat.
Mortal Kombat's always been in a weird boat.
Yeah, it transcends.
We all started playing Mortal Kombat at 6.
Yeah, exactly. That brand's reputation kind of transcends.
That's bad parenting, though.
Yeah, but it's sold. It's sold.
Well, even so, my sister used to be involved in the For Honor community. She was actually, I don't know if you watch any For Honor stream. She was on the Ubisoft stream as a featured cosplayer. She was dressed as the Warden.
Right.
And she told me
Famous
a lot of the
Sam
players
Show character.
She told me, not the right one. She was the female Warden.
No, it's fine. I know.
Not the
Warden that move when they got the Samurai Showdown. But anyway, she told me, when she was at PAX East, she got or PAX East or West, one or the other. She said there were some players that kind of, I don't know, gave her kind of some sideways looks. She didn't think,
right.
She just said it was a headache to deal with. They said they complained too much or whatever. But yeah, every scene has its own flavor of drama. This one is having to blow up bigger than it should have. I think also Overwatch had that kind of drama too. And Overwatch is a shooting game.
Oh yeah, you know what? You know what I remember?
Overwatch is a shooting game, but if I remember, Overwatch is T.
It is T. Yeah.
Either way, 13 and up. It's not exactly what we're
doing. No, but I'm gonna
Right.
put my Twitter timeline on blast again because I remember seeing a tweet that said, I used to take my sister, some Smash commentator, a lady said that she used to take her younger sister with her, but she really, so she could get into Smash. But and she said that she's actually really glad that their younger sister got into Overwatch instead. And I said, actually, that might not be a community known for its welcoming manner either. At least personally, when somebody tells me that the Overwatch community is welcoming, I'm like, actually don't say that. It's a bit of a weird place.
Honestly, I say dang near no community is welcoming.
No, that's not true.
It's
cool.
tough.
Yeah, there are places that are, on the face of it, a lot better about this than others.
DOA community is great.
DOA community is fantastic, actually, yes.
Yeah, DOA is great.
and that is why, again, when this EVO blow up happened, I was like, yeah, not so valued to the core now, are you?
Right, yeah. No,
I mean, I get kind of, there's kind of sideways where you talk about, oh, these girls aren't core values, and then the next day you have Baraka ripping off Sonya's face.
Right, yeah.
Right.
I mean,
but that's a big question, right? Like that whole kind of sexuality versus violence thing, that's never gonna end. That question.
Well, it really isn't.
Hey, look at this way. That same EVO, everyone's hyping up SNK heroines. By the way, anyone listen to this?
Great game.
If you're one of those SNK stands who will hype up anything with his name on it, no matter how suspect or lousy it is, kindly and sincerely go sod off. That game is garbage.
Nah.
Even if it wasn't garbage, it is though. Think about the story.
It was never gonna be the story is that Kukri's a freaking creep bag. It's amazing.
No, the story is, and tell me if this is and people that will defend this.
I'll vouch. No, you're talking truth.
For those who don't know, and by the way, if you have a friend who supports this entirely, you need to sit down and talk to them so they don't wind up on the news like all these other
Wow!
The plot is the Kukri, who's a new character from King of Fighters 14,
right?
Has kidnapped a bunch of SNK girls, like Shermie, who's DLC, Kula, Athena, Mai, etc., etc. The plot is having them fight each other in suspect clothing, and it's embarrassing them, and he is farming their embarrassment, humiliation, despair, so he can keep them in prison's own little paradise forever. Now, basically, they're playing sex slavery for a laugh.
Yeah, they are.
A lot of undertones
somehow,
there,
yeah. The undertones are kind of real on it.
Somehow, this is more wholesome than DOA, where all the girls dress like this their own free will.
Yeah, I mean, I think that
Now,
entire
to be
situation.
fair,
You know what's
SNK
really weird?
Heroes is not trying to be an Evo game.
Yeah, that's true.
Honestly, they're not trying to be anything. That was a glorified April Fool's joke.
No. What they told me when I played. Keep in mind when I played, I had like this.
you know,
look of-
Fexel did that better. The glorified April Fool's thing.
Oh, they did.
Fexel did do it
I
better.
didn't play Flexel like that, but I admit that was better. But anyway, I remember
Fexel's
playing SNK at the kiosk, and keep in mind, I'm a big Neo Geo Balcos fan, so I'm expecting
Yes, you are.
more of that. So I play this game, and I have like this look of contorted horror. I'm trying to think. I remember some picture of me. Think about
Yo,
it was
where's
like
the
this
picture?
like half horror, half anger. Think about when.
I'm imagining when you hit the block button.
Think about when the Undertaker first found out that DDP was stalking his wife. Whatever face the Undertaker made, that was the face I was making. And I turned to the rep, and I said, like, "What the f is this?" And I was like raising my voice, and he told me what's wrong. I said, I said, "This is what's wrong. What the heck?" And he told me, don't worry about it. That's serious. I said, why'd you make it? Man.
Why'd you make the game? Yo, I gotta hang out with Psychoblue at the
I
demo
hope
booth
their
one day.
answer was because we felt like it.
He told me, we wanted to be like a beginner-friendly game. So I said, so you want to have
All right.
DDP's first fighting game be this?
Yeah,
And
apparently.
He told me to get lost. But anyway.
All right, fair. Yeah, but that's funny.
So,
I feel like we put a lot of games on blast from that front.
keep in mind, there are a lot of people, the aforementioned SNKs, who like defend that game as vehemently as I might defend Neo Geo Battle Coliseum or Sam Show 5 Special, like vehemently. Saying like, and whenever someone brings up what I'm bringing up, it's supposed to be for beginners. Look, they're not going to learn if they're just face rolling, and there's no cross-ups.
There's no cross-up? That game has block button? Wait a minute, I've never actually heard anything about this game.
That game has block button, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Alright, I don't like it either. I'm with
That game
Psychoblue on
has
this
tech,
one.
but it does have block button.
I'm with Blue on this one. Sorry. Sorry, y'all.
Your argument has now evolved into gameplay.
Anyway.
Crazy story be damned. This game doesn't have cross-ups. This game doesn't have...
So you're basically saying anyone who is coming into fighting games for the first time must be an absolute idiot. Thank you for confusing ignorance with just outright stupidity. I'm sure they appreciate that. That's violation number 1. Violation number 2. Violation number 2, where you kind of go into the next part, the core values. You want to fight these stereotypes about fighting games.
Right.
Want to show them that there is commitment and all these great things. I mean, think about how long it takes to get good at Tekken. You could be playing Tekken for 10 years and still... I only just learned. I'm playing Tekken...
Oh no, now this has become an entry barrier argument.
Yeah. you want... No, let me... Anyway, you want to show the hard work, commitment, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
In fighting games.
Right.
You want to show this is a gentleman's or an adult's competitive video game. This is what you do when you're grown up.
Right.
This game more. No, you want to show, okay, we're all a bunch of depraved perverts. This is how we get our kids. And if you're a woman, well, hopefully you like girls too. Saying, because this is what you're gonna get.
SNK has a lot of like female-focused products, but they're not fighting games.
But
right?
Think about this, yeah. Like that King of Fighters for girls, where it's just like that.
Yeah, King of Fighters for girls is goofy.
Why couldn't that have been a fighting game?
Well, I don't mind them using the universe and branching out on that.
Yeah, but that just shows like they don't.
I always really like the argument that Genjiro from Sam Show was made to appeal to females. I really like that little factoid about his development because it just doesn't make sense the more I think about it.
Shout out to my chat going Urian in a thong for the ladies.
Well, yeah. Hey,
I gotta say, I was demanding of that thong when I found out that Urian was gonna make it.
It has to be though. They already did it. You gotta stick with it, right?
I'm like, it has to be it.
I mean, but anyway, the ideal is. So I said to a friend, like, so they must think that King of Fighters for girls, which they've titled appropriately KOF
Yeah,
for girls,
King of Fighters
where you
for
can date
girls.
like Rock or Maxima or whatever, depending on your type. It just shows these your perverted brethren, with the other side of the chromosome alignment. They're playing this game, but because your chromosomes came out this way, you don't get the press button.
Okay.
You don't get the press buttons, good.
Options.
So what you're saying is you want gender flip SNK heroines.
I'm alright.
No.
No, actually,
I
no. You heard
I
him.
want-
He wants Neo Geo Battle Coliseum. That's what he
Well, yeah.
wants.
That game.
That's what.
Look, and you can add
I want that
dating sim.
game too because it had King Lion in it, but we
Hey.
can't all get what we want.
But and better yet, you can also have the dating sim part because you can have like a friendship booster if you team them up enough times.
Yo,
Like in Dynasty Warriors.
Yo, somebody make this.
I want the
Hold
whole
on.
visual novel segment like rival schools.
So you can be courting King Lion to be.
wow, yo.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Because of my trust level with King Lion, this is now unblockable.
I
Yeah.
am now King Lion.
Or his Netsu builds
Hold on,
up,
wait.
or his hypercharge builds up quicker, or without having to do a special move, or it lasts longer because you build it up so much.
Wow,
I
this
need
is
to
some
see
next
this-
level.
I need to see this in tournaments.
This is some next level Neo Geo discourse right here. This is.
Somebody makes top 8 because they're better friends with King Lion than Mr. Big.
So be it. So be it. All right. I wanna.
Anyway, Anime Evo.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was fun combo though.
No, it's fine. Yeah, it's funny.
But Anime Evo, they are right to rebrand. I don't blame them.
Yes.
You can't watch a Chris Benoit match anymore without thinking about that elephant in the room about his family.
Right.
Right.
If you can, then I don't want to talk to you about wrestling ever again. I've met people who do that, and like I kind of tell them something similar to what I told the hardcore SNK stands who like SK Heroin. But it's an albatross that's just best left untouched. You got to leave it alone. I don't know what we're gonna call it. Maybe just call it like the. Do I think you can call it, since it's not just anime games? What do you call it? The bin.
The bin, yo.
The bin.
The fuck?
It can be anything. It can be the bargain bin. It can be the sin bin. It can be the trash bin. It can be the laundry bin with like all the gorgeous gowns and tuxedos and stuff, like the highbrow bin.
Right.
It can
Right.
be anything. Just the bin.
The bin. I'll
The bin.
pass that along, but
Bin 2021.
Bin.
the bin. Yo. That's a good take. I don't honestly. Yeah. So just to like wrap that up, Anime Evo. Okay. So as I understand it, Anime Evo this year is still going to be called Anime Evo because we're a month away and rebranding at this point. It's just a lot of negotiations to make. But they will be doing it in the future when they have a whole year to plan instead of like 3 weeks. Because we are expecting to have those registrations open next week, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll have plenty of the Evo weekends that are coming up that have already passed. Actually, they're not going to have anything for us, but a lot of communities are still going to be playing their weeklies, still going to be playing their bi-weeklies or monthlies, whatever. A couple of events are going to pop up here and there to try to fill the gap, things like that. The Them's Fighting Herds devs already announced that they're planning on a substitute event for their own community, so things like that are going to be happening. I must say, in that response, I really wish KI said something during all this, the Microsoft team. I really wish Microsoft had some initiative to actually put their scene back together and try to get people playing again. I think it's really weird, their silence as a publisher, especially since they went back and opened open leagues for Halo Master Chief Collection on PC instead of doing their physical venues. So I really wish that Microsoft would recognize KI again and start having that esports initiative back. But that's
what I was
just
thinking. Like when KI got picked over Power Rangers, which at the time had its own active league. I thought it was really weird because I hadn't heard Microsoft do anything KI. I thought it was entirely community run.
I think it's community
And
run.
Any kind of comment would involve Microsoft acknowledging they're still supporting it, which obviously it's kind of suspect about that.
Yeah, no. So as I understand it, Maximilian Dude was planning on commentating KI for EVO Online. which seems like a decision you would only make if you're very much into the FGC. To my understanding, the commentators were going to be Max and Sajam. And I think if you were to do that, it's probably because you're already in the FGC, you already have their contacts, you already know how to get them in place. So, at least to me, that just tells me that Microsoft probably never got involved. Which is probably why Microsoft never pulled out. Because if Microsoft caught wind in this, they would have pulled out. I think as early as like Capcom.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
I wish they would do something. And frankly, like that also, I think a lot of these communities that are dealing with this fallout, right? Like. Just to address it, I'm happy for Main 6 for doing what they're doing with the Dem's Fighting Heroes community. I think that after everything that has happened with the Skullgirls community, Autumn Games needs to do something. Like real
I
talk.
agree with that.
Now, people have always famously hated on Autumn Games because they own the license, and we should give it back to Lab Zero, and Mike Z should make his money. I remember, people who I still talk to, they were telling me, a year ago, hey man, Skullgirls, these Autumn Game guys need to stop taking money from Lab Zero for this game. They need to stop being responsible for this community. They got to give it back to the people or whatever. And now those people are suspect, right?
Right.
So I have a question.
Yeah, tell me.
Is Mike Z considered the creator? Like, I saw he was the lead designer.
Okay, so the official line is that Alex Ahad is the creator of the franchise. Right, like Alex Ahad is the creator of the idea. He went to Mike Z to make the game per se, right? And then Mike Z ended up being the lead programmer. Lab Zero has a lot of art team, has a lot of programmer team, right? Mike Z's the face of it, but Lab Zero is a larger team. Now that being said, Autumn Games owns the IP. They continue to develop Skullgirls Mobile. They haven't said anything about this. And I think it's really weird for them because not only do they control the Discord for Skullgirls, they control the social media for Skullgirls, they control the console versions of Skullgirls, and this is pretty major for people looking to pick up the game, right? Like, immediately the Skullgirls community is like, well, this story is only going to hurt us for people who are trying to get in the game because now they're going to, not want to be part of our community or whatever. And regardless of whether or not you like Autumn Games, they have the capacity to say, the Skullgirls community doesn't stand for these things. We're going to go ahead and, make sure that these things don't happen again by putting in whatever safeguards we can. And we're going to try to substitute the experience that you were all promised with EVO Online. Instead, these people who are still making the mobile gacha game or whatever have not said anything. Yep. And it's really, I really kind of hope for better. Because otherwise, everybody has every right to hate Autumn then, because they don't even care.
So, I have a question.
Sure.
Was whatever Mike was doing, if he is indeed ousted for all the dumb stuff he has said the last few weeks, do you think if you are sticking with Skullgirls, you run into the Chris Benoit situation? Are you that deeply involved in it?
Well, that's a great question. And the fact is that if Mike Z wants to keep working on Skullgirls, that's fine. The thing is that if Lab Zero doesn't see any reason to fire the guy, then they don't have any reason to fire the guy. That's it, right? But he doesn't have to be running around with the license in the way that he has, right? You have to consider that Mike Z has been not only the face of the brand, but the face of the entire community for weeks and months now, where every time Mike Z shows up somewhere, the Skullgirls community kind of has to stand by it, because that's kind of that's their equivalent of getting an official outing as a game, you know what I mean? So that's where I say Autumn Games needs to come in and say, actually we probably shouldn't let this guy who doesn't have a whole lot of social acclamation, I don't even know what to call it, somebody who's not doing that stuff, right? Running around with the license, making updates and doing deals and talking to the community, when actually, that's probably a bad idea to give somebody that much power over the whole Skullgirls brand, right?
Is that what he was doing?
Well, he showed
that involved?
Yeah, absolutely. He was doing commentary for every single Skullgirls tournament. He was, on every single show. He was doing, interviews for every single outlet, and
that's my thought. Someone told me that he wasn't that involved. That's why I asked. Because I thought
that person is lying.
That person is lying. I'm sorry.
What the heck, man? Every time I hear Skullgirl's
That is
name
the
comes up.
first name that comes up.
Exactly, because he
For
has
a
been
reason.
actively involved in the community, whether you hate that or
yeah.
not. Like,
Yeah.
So
So
unfortunately,
you really can't Benoit him like that. Like it's
sounds
hard
like
to do that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like he was so involved that anyone new trying to the game is going to have kind of that. Oh, by the way, the guy who made slash did all this stuff for this game, the figurehead of this game, here's what he thinks about so and so,
Right.
and it's going to be an
Right.
albatross hanging over your head.
Right, yeah.
and
This
that's
isn't a Benoit situation. This is a Vince McMahon situation.
Well, that's not true. Vince actually hides. He has lawyers to lawyer up. Mike
Right.
can afford
No,
that.
but I'm saying like synonymous with brand.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah. So that's why I think if Microsoft's not involved, that's it, right? Like if they the publisher doesn't have to involve themselves necessarily, but I think in Skullgirl's situation in particular, it's weird because like he had Mike Z has been on the top of the hill for that game for a long time, and then like when this stuff starts coming out, it's crickets from their publisher who have been more than happy to allow all this stuff happen. So I hope that as we wrap up the discussion that the publishers of the games that are gonna miss out on EVO Online, they come up with something, right? They rally their community, and meanwhile, Anime EVO is still gonna be there. So those communities, those smaller games, are still gonna have their chance to show off. And I guess by unfortunate proxy, there's gonna be a lot of eyes on EVO Anime EVO this year, just because
Yes, there is.
just because there's nothing else in terms of majors going on.
There's nothing else, and I mean, what else can you do about that brand? And like,
That's It's
I want to know.
yeah, sure.
That's on the first time we talked about today, which is like how does this come back from? I think we need to accept that at least until Combo Breaker happens, that upward growth the FGC is going to put for a long time. There's so much negativity right now about so many things, and this sort of thing. And I said this: we are never in the mainstream press for anything good.
Yep.
And I told my my supervisor about like what's going on ESPN because she asked me what's going on. I showed her the ESPN article, and I told her I think I need to find a new hobby because right now, as a clinical supervisor, if a potential family or a client or a potential employee who might want to work under me sees that, yeah, the guy who's the BCBA and all this stuff is in fact Psychoblue, and the association game might be played. It's way harder to be objective about that sort of thing if, one, you don't know what the scene's actually like, and two, you got your kids to worry about.
Right.
So it's something that for a lot of people, and you already saw Knuckle Dew's backing out. He also did a horrific car accident. I'm glad he's okay.
Speed Kicks is also dropping out.
Speed Kicks is dropping out. I saw Mama Dow dropping out.
Did Mama Dow drop out? Actually, wow. Okay, I just talked to them. That's crazy. Okay.
Mama Dow said she's going to be backing off for a while.
Okay.
All these people are backing away, and right now, again, it's just all online. We're all stuck here for whatever reason, and the fact that this is the stain we're gonna have to deal with, a lot of people just might find their stuff to do. So people who are sticking with it, it's gonna be a big uphill battle, and they need to temper their expectations as such.
Right.
Growth is gonna be a pipe dream for a long time. We'll be lucky if we still have like leagues after this. I wouldn't be surprised if Namco and Capcom, after they finish obligations here, just say, you know what, we'll take a break. Capcom might still do some of those because they have all the Intel partnerships. They're going to the Olympics this year, obviously.
Yeah.
But other stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if this is, now we're done. There's no more people around anymore. There's no profit in it right now. We'll see, though. This is such a big stain.
Yeah, you know what I think? One thing that does highlight this situation is that when people started being stuck inside because of COVID, there were a lot of things, like a lot of online tournaments and initiatives, and even myself, organizing Nothing But Netplay, We did kind of recognize that a lot of players and a lot of people are going to be learning about playing online and online competitions, and a lot of stuff was going to have to be figured out, and people were trying to grow their respective brands and ride that wave of renewed interest in online events because there really wasn't any alternative. But yeah, you make a good point, right? Like now we have to see where things go in terms of FGC. Unfortunately, right, like this is another one of those situations that sets us back a fair bit, but it's going to be a battle for those who are going to stick with it. And I'm sure people will stick with it, and people will continue to look for growth where they can, especially since there's no really alternative, right? Like a lot of these people don't want to see their game just die, so they're not going to. That's just there.
Can't everybody convert into like on the Final Fantasy 14 players or whatever.
Not everybody. I'm the opposite. Well, okay, so my story is that I played a lot of fighters before I went to Final Fantasy 14, but hey, I'm back, all right? I'm not retired. I don't play that game as much now. So, yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting time. I feel like this podcast has always been, how do I say it? This podcast has had a very consistent set of topics, right? 1, COVID, 2, FGC, and 3, like how the conversation is going to evolve. And I feel like at this point we're sitting at a very interesting place because no longer is it about like what allegations are out there, but like who is going to come and claim all of this stuff going on and who's going to make it grow. So right. We'll see.
Are we going to make it out of the fallout of this?
Right. Yeah, so I want to wrap up all the FGC stuff and just kind of touch on some of the next-gen stuff that we've been talking about. We've been running a very, very long show tonight, but super glad to have it. So, yeah, let's talk about next-gen very briefly. Rumors come out that next-gen games are going to cost $70, so $10 US more. For, I guess, and I guess this is more just because about PS5 and Xbox, but I feel like that is going to affect every single platform.
Oh yeah, no,
including PC and whatever spin-off devices that these publishers come out with, or even Nintendo Switch. Just by nature of being in the same market, right? So here it is. So 2K recently announced that NBA 2K21 will cost $60 on current gen consoles, while the next gen versions will cost $70.
I'm not surprised.
That is interesting.
You knew it was coming.
I mean,
it hasn't gone up since the previous generation, right? When the PS3 360 generation. So I mean, it's been 2 generations at the same price point. What do you expect?
And there's been a lot of reasons that people came out with about this. Like, okay, well, games haven't increased the price in a while, so now they're gonna eventually do it. It just had to happen. Or I've heard things saying that I've heard this really weird one that said that because game devs are generally making less money in the business these days, then they are going to be selling their games at a higher price point so that they can make, they can recoup their costs or pay, the increasing bloat of AAA studios or whatever. And yeah, and there was the other question was free to play, right? Like, okay, well, either a game is going to try to make its money on the spot or it's going to try to make it over time. But actually, that's weird to me. That entire conversation is weird to me because people started, when this came out, people were saying, okay, well, of course, games have to cost more. Well, games already cost more if you really think about it. And I'm not even getting to DLC. I'm talking about just things that are on the disc that we're selling, right? Like, a game that is $60 doesn't just cost $60 anymore. I remember when free-to-play was becoming a business model that people were saying, oh, now if I'm buying a game with a price tag initially, that must mean that I'm getting the full experience, Like, and some publishers actually adopted this. Like Smite, every high-res game, I think, has that. Like, okay, you can buy into the free-to-play model, but since you believe that if you want to pay a price tag up front, you're going to get everything, then here, why don't you buy... it's like $25 or something like that.
Honestly, I feel like Hi-Rez is kicking themselves forever coming up with that.
Yeah, probably, but
it remains one of the best deals in gaming because of it.
Exactly.
And they have like really high morale due to that. Even when they like go off the chain with their skins and stuff, where they be like, yo, $100-something Odyssey.
Exactly. Like that. That's the thing, right? Like this that's the ideal situation, right? Where like if you buy a game up front, you get everything, okay? And some games do that.
Well,
high-res games have that. Other games have that.
On everything, because
okay, everything that is critical. Right?
Yes, everything that is critical. But then people will come after games for things that are not critical. Like we look at every Koei Tecmo game, and they got like 3 billion costumes. In them.
I have a very particular opinion about that, and I actually don't think Koei Tecmo did anything wrong with Dead or Alive at 6. For the record, I have the view that DOA 6's costumes are positively tame by what actually exists in gaming. I'll die on that hill. People disagree with me.
I'm in full agreement.
But
I agree too.
Also, they pull that same nonsense on like Dynasty Warriors. I'm like, this ain't nothing new.
Yeah, this isn't nothing new. It isn't like.
I'm trying to get my friend hooked on Koei Warriors. I'm describing to her the halcyon days of the pre-era, when Sun Shangzheng was still a woman, when Wan Xiao was still machismo, Dong Zhuo didn't look like a melt man. The halcyon days.
Now,
if I show her like
we
Xiao
have
Kao
to
or whatever,
sex like that though. Oh, go ahead.
now if I show her like Xiao Kao or whatever, I'm gonna get looked at like I'm senpai. That's a shame.
Now I want to say this. The thing is that it's really not that simple, right? Like if you give the
DW3, but go on.
I just want to say in regards to the price tag going up that at least in my opinion, it's not that simple, right? Like the game costs $10 more, but 2K games, the creators of Grand Theft Auto, the creators like the creators of Grand Theft Auto 5, did you guys remember 2K20 literally having a slot machine in it? Like,
yep.
That it's bizarre to me.
Man,
what if they have that on top of the game being $70?
Exactly. That's what.
Hurry out of a freaking booster pack.
It's not bizarre because they know people are gonna buy it anyway, man. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
No, but I see weird decisions. I see weird takes about this, defending it, like
on mobile.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like I see weird takes about this where people say, "Oh, they gotta be able to pay their staff living wages." I'm like, get the fuck out of here! If they're not paying their staff living wages now, oh my god.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, nothing necessarily gets cheaper, right?
Right.
Most of the time, everything just gets more expensive, right? Maybe gas might be a little bit cheaper, right? But for the most part, the box. A box of silver costs like $4. Now it costs like $6 or $7, man. It shouldn't go back down. You know what I mean? So like, the fuck
gas
you
and
talking
PC
about?
games. That's not it.
Gas and PC and Steam sales.
Nothing necessarily goes down. Nothing necessarily goes down. It's just it goes up in price, but and the quality gets worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just what it is.
I really don't defend this in any way personally. Like, I'm probably gonna get a PS5 because I want to be able to connect with console communities or take advantage of the things that consoles are gonna have next gen. But I mean, God, it's indefensible to me at this point. Like, so many games at this point have implemented schemes so that they can make more money after you give them $60. What difference is $10 up front to them? Like, realistically, they don't want $10 from every user. They want another $60.
They want everything.
Yeah, like. That doesn't make them enough money for it to be a serious change, I think.
They got shareholders, man. They got people to satisfy, man.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is just the actual depraved mentality of the community, like the game publishers at this point. Like, if they've actually just run out of options, which I refuse to believe, that the only thing they can do is just tack on $10 to the console's like disc price. Like, why? Like, I don't understand. Where do you get off here?
The digital version?
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Like, what about the digital buy? Like,
it's gonna be the same, bro.
Oh my god, it's so stupid. It just confuses me.
That's what hurts.
That's
crazy, bro.
And I don't buy discs. I just talked about this on the last episode. I don't buy physical copies. So to hear about this from a digital perspective, it's like, fuck, man. What are you doing? How does this change anything for me? First you charge me more money for your console, and then PlayStation jacks up their membership.
What do you want from me?
Like,
money.
Exactly. Like,
Exactly.
it's just money, damn it.
They're your friend, man. They're not your friend.
Jesus. I just want to vent.
You have Kaz Hirai and Bill Gates just laughing like Ted DiBiase right now.
I know. It just I just want to vent about it. Like, jeez.
Ted DiBiase, the dad, not the son who. Whatever.
It's so
He had
so
a great
painful.
Song, but my personality
That
was
dude
just
was
like,
dope.
whatever. I could get your money. You could not. Doesn't really bother me. Do what
Yeah,
you
I mean,
want.
They are already trying to take everything. So like,
I just find it completely indefensible. I just, the more I think about it, the more it just sucks. I don't know. It's
Thank God
My
I'm
thing-
PC
my thing
Master
is-
Race.
yeah,
my thing
PC.
is your game better. Like, if you're gonna raise the standard, you gotta raise that standard enough to where we be like, okay, yeah, $10 makes sense. But
$10 doesn't make
It's not
sense.
gonna
I just
happen.
here,
It's not gonna happen,
here's
bro.
the thing: we honestly don't even have to go that much farther with raising the bar. I remember having that conversation with somebody. It was like, yo, honestly, could we stop pushing graphics for a little bit if it's this hard on y'all?
Yeah,
like,
there's that too.
We could just make the game 60 and add more content, and people.
You know,
will be
I
happy
think
with
it
that.
was Digital Foundry. I think it was Digital Foundry. Something I saw earlier saying that they were saying, hey, you know, a lot of these games that are come out next gen, we know already that they're going to be running at 30 frames per second. Yeah, here it is. Look, here it is. Eurogamer says next gen consoles, why we'll still be playing games at 30 frames per second. So what did we get?
That makes me not want to buy it.
Yeah, like
slower than F-Zero X.
exactly. Like like why? What did you do then? That's why when people were talking about
96.
yeah, I mean when people talk about graphics, it's like, well, at the end of the day, the publishers are still going to run like these shitty, unoptimized versions of the games on consoles, right? And they're going to run at like 30 FPS if we're being generous. So what did we win here? You know, like why does another generation even need to exist? Aside from the fact that, you know, Microsoft probably doesn't want to be associated with the Xbox One anymore, but that's kind of just them, you know, not necessarily PlayStation or Nintendo. I mean, hey, to be fair, Nintendo isn't even playing the game, right? They're just, hey, you know, it's
Well, yeah, they play a different game where they don't reduce the price of their game for like 15 years.
yeah, they just never, or they never bring it out again, you know, because that's also a thing that they can do. Just never put the game out again for whatever reason. But hey, right?
I think Mario Kart 7 still full price.
Probably is.
Yeah, like I said, it's gonna get more expensive before it gets cheaper, unless, like, you know, Psycho said, PC, you know, the Master Race. You got sites like Fanatical, Green Man,
I'm
you know what I
pissed.
mean, like shit like that. You know what I mean?
Trainers.
Yeah, you know,
going
so,
hard. Huh?
got trainers.
Yeah, like, oh man. And they remain godlike. Like, it ain't stopped.
It sucks. I'm so upset.
And they'll offer deals immediately. Like,
Yes,
I
they
recently
will.
Got what, like the freaking like deluxe F1 2020.
Yeah, those are
And
nice,
they're
right?
Like, yo, Fanatical was like 55 for all of that, and it's the pre-order version, even though they're already on the window on that. Like,
Yeah. I
okay,
remember
you know,
when MK11 came out.
immediately. Okay.
Yeah. Aliens and I dealt with that when MK11 came out. We got it like for like $10 off, and it was like it can't. And we pre-ordered it like a week before, so it was like. It's one of those situations, you know, PC is going to always have these advantages for whatever reason, because Nintendo and Sony et al. Are going to have, like, they've always been very protective of their keys, right? They just, I guess they just don't want that kind of business popping up around their consoles.
they get their cut.
Yeah, their cut, right?
You gotta get their cut.
Yeah, which means they have to attack in a different way, because it's hard to compete with that level of value.
Yep. So okay, so yeah, $70 is going to be the price of the next gen games, and I'm generally upset with that, but there's always going to be some other reason. So let's talk about Steam, since we were just talking about Steam. So Steam sale, I believe it wraps up tomorrow. So if anyone wants to buy the last minute games, do so within the next few hours, if you will.
Yeah.
What did I pick up on Steam? What have you guys picked up on Steam while I open my Steam?
I haven't gotten anything.
I can tell you what I'm going to pick up in September.
Tell me, what are you going to pick up in September?
WWE Battle.
Ah, yes.
Oh yeah.
He's already on that grind.
So for those who don't know, I was the Discord mod for NBA Playgrounds from the exact same developer. The sequel to that game, NBA 2K Playgrounds 2, as the name might imply, was bought by 2K sometime before the second game came out.
Mm-hmm.
That dev now works mostly with 2K, and I remember a year or so ago, I think 2 years ago, the developer told me, now I followed this guy because I'm a Discord mod, so naturally I hunted down who's actually making the game to kind of coordinate a bit, like balance patches stuff in the first game before 2K bought it.
Right.
And he said he wants to do like a WWE one someday. I said, well, we will wait for it, and now it's coming. And he did tell me I was inspired by WWE All-Stars. Now, I wrote the SRK guide for WWE All-Stars.
I read
a
it.
large chunk of it. I appreciate it. Thank you. And naturally, I'm hyped to the moon and back about this. All they have to do is give intergender wrestling and give me mirror matches. Not because I'm some weird Riona nut who wants to see Braun Strowman decimate Alyssa Bliss or whatever.
Right.
But because I want to make only one team.
Hey,
I want full Def Jam with mirror matches. Def Jam mirror matches.
Right.
It does have like intergender. I want to stretch the Fiend into submission with Brie Bella.
Right.
And
Like, and honestly, this shouldn't even really be a point of discussion. This should just be what happens. How long we done had Chun-Li?
Exactly. And how many times? Or when Nia Jax just destroyed 3 world champions like nothing in the Royal Rumble.
That was sick. That whole sequence was sick.
The gates are open. If or Ronda Rousey when she tapped out Triple H or whatever.
Mm.
It's done. The gates are firmly open. Besides, Charlotte's like taller than like all the cruiserweights put together. So what's the issue?
What's the problem?
You're just hyping up freaking Charlotte blasting like a bunch of cruiserweights. That sounds hilarious to me.
I want to see like She-Hulk type stuff where she's like taller than a lot of the guy characters in Marvel 3, but it's Charlotte and she just towers over Callisto or Tozawa or whoever else.
She hits Callisto with the She-Hulk like crack.
Yes.
I'm all about it, especially if they make it over the top.
Or air throw is like a Ric Flair type thing.
Oh man!
Or she has run setups and like the run setups, like the Flair low blow.
Damn!
Or
he's got the whole idea on deck.
The chop block.
Or her grab is like the claw version of the hold. So it just looks like or Nakamura, like his low blow would just be like full Johnny Cage, Mortal Kombat 9 X-ray. Oh my god, what did you just do? Type low blow.
Jeez.
No, but I'm all about it. So,
okay, so like, what I bought on
go for it.
At this point, I've been through enough Steam sales to where I'm like I'm mostly good. Like there's not really big time titles that I pick up through there. It's always a bunch of small cleanup. Yeah. And usually, especially because I'm not necessarily a big AAA guy most of the time, I usually end up just getting like big small packs of games. This has been one of the goofiest packs of games I've gotten in a while. Okay, so I got like Puzzle Quest Galatrix for $1 because I used to play that when I was younger. I'm like, I want that again.
Okay.
I got Shatter for like $1, which I think that's an Arkanoid game. I think if I remember correctly, it was on my wish list. So I was like, yeah, sure, under $1, let's do it. I got Crayola Scoop.
Yo, play that game.
Crayola rocks.
Go play that game.
And I got Arc System Works' own Gacha Racing second. Like all of that by itself was under $10 to $15. I'm like, this is what I do with Steam sales at this point. Anything bigger, I go somewhere else. Like I think Fanatical recently had a deal on Dark Souls 3, so I finally scooped that up on PC.
Oh yeah, a lot of those just come along.
I got Resident Evil 3. I should have mentioned that. So that should be, I think, it's pretty affordable now in the last Steam sale. I think I saw it on the Steam sale.
Let me see.
I think Resident Evil 3.
All right, so let me see. What did I get? I'm looking at my purchase history. I bought BlazBlue Central Fiction because I haven't played a BB game in years. I played the first one. That was the only time I ever played a BB game. The first one.
Be confused.
The most I know about that game, I did get it for PS4. I played it, I think, once and just never touched it again. But it did come with an art book. It was the Amazon deal I got years ago. And my friend got it the next week, and I told him, listen, make sure your girlfriend doesn't see this article. And I said, why do you think that way? I said, no, it's not like that kind of dirty. It's a different kind of dirty. It's like, I said this, it's Smash kind of. Keep in mind, recent news has made that a little bit more true than I would like,
Right.
but I digress. So the next week he texted me, did Arxis just sell me hentai?
I wanna recall to actually when I bought I haven't bought, since I don't buy physical games, I don't know what they look like now, but I remember the first disc of BlazBlue having Lambda on the cover of the disc. I was like, what the fuck am I looking at? I'm like, so I'm surprised. I'm not surprised it hasn't changed. I don't know what they are now, but
I think mine was that Mikado character.
Oh, Mikado. Okay.
Wearing a really suspect swimsuit. And
oh my god, that sounds funny.
Like, we're never opening this book again.
Might be more pain than her actual outfit.
Yeah, so I bought Central Fiction. I have some people that I play with. Some people that I've been able to play with. I bought Umineko Golden Fantasia. That game has rollback.
Okay.
That game has.
You are reaching back with that one.
Yeah, I know people who play this game, and it has rollback, so I can actually play it. And it's actually been a historically very expensive game, so it's always been like $30 every time I look at it, and I'm like, oh, now it's on sale, I may as well pick it up.
Let's wait.
Yeah, and Gunfire Reborn, I bought. Now, Payne, one of ours, really likes this game, and I played it for the first time yesterday, and this game is amazing. It's like Borderlands meets, I guess, a roguelike RPG. The guns are really nice. It's really good in co-op. Give it a try if anyone hasn't heard of this. Yeah. You'll die a lot, but with the advent of Souls games, you guys will be fine.
Yeah,
and then
it's a. I want to help with the description. So
yeah, sure.
Yeah, think of roguelites, Binding of Isaac, Rogue Legacy, Dead Cells. It's like one of those, but this time the rule where you can put a rule set on that and just make it anything. The rule set this time is Borderlands, so it's pretty great.
It's really fun. Check it out if you like Risk of Rain, which I stream a lot here. Then check it out. And then I did a second pass, in which I picked up Fire Pro Wrestling. I cannot tell you all what I'm planning to do with Fire Pro Wrestling yet, but we're doing something with Fire Pro Wrestling.
I haven't played that shit since PlayStation, man.
I will tell you this right now: you will not be playing it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not playing it. Good guess. It's not about playing it. You're right.
By playing it, if we like Sims, like you play Sim City.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I bought Fire Pro, and I will probably tell people more about this later. I bought Doom 64. This is ported by Night Dive, so the people who've done a lot of other retro shooter ports. It's actually really fun. I played a little bit of it. I'm planning on just streaming it because I had a good time when I played the first few levels of it. I bought Marvel 3, actually. I already have this game on PSN, and I just decided to pick it up. I saw it there for cheap. I said, you know what? I heard Proto bought the game, so I said, all right, yeah, we'll play on PC. I'm sure we'll find a time to play it together. And I bought that. I think that was it. Yeah, that was just kind of everything I picked up. So I did end up picking up some, a fair bit of money in that, but I think it was all like $30.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Me, I didn't buy anything, man. I'm still shamelessly playing Destiny 2 because. And I'm just waiting for next week, man. Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes, Ghost of Tsushima.
Yes.
Yes, I want to see you play that game. I want to see what it's actually about.
I do want to see you play that game.
I'm going to be sitting here watching it. So I'm waiting for that. I think we've kind of covered all the ground for the night. I don't know if we have anything else to talk about. I don't know if there's anything else to say.
I gotta go to bed. I have a dance appointment tomorrow morning.
All right. Well, I do appreciate you sticking with us. Let's try to wrap it up. So again, this has been the GBL Podcast. Check out Psychoblue at Psychoblue9 on Twitter. Check out the Street Fighter Cross Tekken community. Love those guys. Love the things they do. So, yeah. I don't know if you have anything else to say.
I'm running a Marvel Infinite tournament next Sunday.
Next Sunday. Sunday, 3 p.m. Marvel Infinite. Check this man out on Twitter. I'm sure he will have more information. And that's going to be it from us, guys. So we'll be back here very soon. And we'll see you all next time. Everybody, say your goodbyes.
Have a safe evening, everyone. And again, I know the world right now is a pretty wild place, but the most you can do is smile, say we'll get through this, and press some buttons to keep your mind off those troubles for just a little bit longer. Everyone have a safe evening.
All right, everybody.
Likewise, Psycho. Thanks for coming, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.
See y'all
No
later.
worries. I'll talk to you guys later, probably when it's time for more Bound for the Grid stuff.
Absolutely. All right.
Audio.
Have a good one, everybody.